Kids who are not on the autism spectrum. Let's see, seizures also similarly occur at a higher rate. So seizures, I mentioned this, seizures are something you want to rule out before we dive into other types of sleep interventions. Maybe most seizures actually do occur at night, and they can wake kids up. It's also maybe something, I don't want to like overgeneralize this, but there is some data out there looking at seizures as a precursor for like really explosive behavior, real mild seizures. And so seeing a neurologist, a specialist, and having them look for that, that is a thing. I think it's rare, and I don't want to like overblow that, but whenever we can get to a medical solution before embarking on a long sort of like, behavior analytic or shaping procedure, whatever, it's always nice if we can rule it out on a medical level. Similarly, GI issues, kids on the autism spectrum have sort of widely documented issues, processing food, so a lot of diarrhea, late potty training, constipation. Imagine these affect sleep, they affect feeding, they affect everything, they affect behavior. So these are also commonly associated, and probably the one that most people are at least tangentially familiar with is sensory sensitivities and insensitivities. So it is, we'll touch on this briefly, it is quasi-common knowledge that kids with autism have, through their nervous system, maybe some sensations they don't feel as much as we do, maybe pain, stimulation, stuff like that, or things that we find aversive, they don't find aversive. Flip side of that, they may have higher needs of certain type of stimulation, which you may see as rocking or toe walking or humming or visual stimulation or any kind of like there's sort of an itch to scratch there, and they will sensory seek towards it. So there are sensory needs. I'm going to kind of caution people against going into a sensory integration rabbit hole, because sensory integration is not an area that has any data, right? There's no science to support sensory integration as a thing. Now, what I don't want to say, because I put this out there because I don't want sensory integration to be, I think sensory activities can be combined with behavioral strategies and behavior interventions, and I think those are important. But the thing with sensory integration is, and I think they can affect behavior very, very positively, sensory strategies. I think they have to be used in the right way. But there is nothing to suggest at this point that doing certain sensory activities integrate your sensory processing, and that's kind of the claim of sensory integration. That science has not been borne out. So, sensory activities, yes, use them, but use them in the same way that you would use them for a kid with ADHD, which is to say, you need to get your wiggles out or your bounces out or your stims out before class, rock and roll. If you need to do that, if you want to use those activities, do work X, Y, and Z, and then we're going to use these sensory activities because there's stuff you love to like motivate you to do that, great, do that. Or if we're going to integrate them into fixed times in your day to get ahead of some sort of, problematic behavior that may have a sensory underpinning, awesome, fantastic, don't do that. What I caution people against is saying, oh my God, he's having a tantrum, get him to the sensory room. Don't do that, okay? Right? Address the sensory needs before they're a problem, right? On a fixed schedule that is not contingent on problem behavior. Problem behavior that results in access to sensory stuff probably is going to encourage more problem behavior. And don't blame the learner for that. That's teaching, right? Okay, so address sensory issues, but just do them strategically and proactively. And in terms of hopes for sort of an underlying neurological connection that's being made that isn't there yet. So, the gifts of visual thinking. I hope you guys can see this well enough. The glass screen is a little funky. But there are some really cool things that come along with this visual platform of thinking, and they're worth talking about because I think, like anything else, helping people with autism be successful in the world has a lot to do with playing to their strengths. Just like the rest of us, right? You know, there's a lot of things that we're not accountants, right? Or we're not engineers, or because we have talents and gifts and strengths in different areas. Those things are speaking for me, those things are terrible and aversive. I had to speak to my student loan holder before I came over here, and they're telling me all about where this went and where this went and where this went, and I'm just like, oh my God, this is the worst, I hate this. I had strength in different areas, and I think we should approach students with autism the same way. And so some of the gifts associated with visual thinking, I also want to back up. That doesn't mean to necessarily isolate them or shield them from all of the other things. Just kind of know where people's strengths are. But this visual thinking affords people an incredible attention to detail. Again, I don't want to over generalize, just like sort of some of the other things associated with autism. People with autism are going to have more or less of these things, so I don't want to like rain manify like all of autism. But these are things that we do see, right? We do see strengths in these areas, commonly. So attention to detail. So this, for example, if you guys ever want to really see kind of the amazing things that the human brain is capable of, Google Stephen Wiltshire. So this is a man with autism who struggles a great deal with social skills. He struggles a great deal with communication, but he's known for creating art by looking at cities, flying over cities one time, and then sketching them out, like verbatim. Verbatim isn't right because that's words, but you know what I mean. And you can see how he does it too. It's not like sketches, and he's not sketching. So this is a great example of linguistic versus visual. It's not how it feels necessarily. This is how it looks. So I think it's really, really interesting. And not to say that there aren't people with autism who create art that have great feeling. This is just how he does it. Art, math, things that are black and white, engineering and computer science, incredibly detailed memories, often going back farther than the rest of us. Early decoding, musical, very prodigious musical capacities, especially as it comes to like recreating sounds and patterns. But autism is a spectrum. And it affects different domains in different ways. People who have difficulty in areas of life skills or social skills may not struggle at all academically. people who, you know, don't really have any impairments in, you know, general day-to-day life skills or putting themselves together, may struggle a great deal with social skills or, you know, have heightened anxiety and challenging behavior. So the point is that we don't want to overgeneralize an individual's performance based on their performance across the board, based on their performance in one area. That's why if you look at a lot of like comprehensive autism or developmental disability related assessment tools, you assess across all domains, right? Language and social and daily living, memory, cognition, you know, school skills, home skills, all types of things. So it's important to, you know, to get a comprehensive picture, that we're getting a comprehensive picture, and to maybe be mindful that if we see somebody performing at maybe a low level in one domain, that we don't overgeneralize and think that they're going to be limited across all domains. Some people will need a little bit of help throughout their life, and some people will need a lot of bit of help throughout their life. I think that is true of the general population. Show a quick video. I love this video. I think it is helpful for perspective taking.
Autism is really hard to explain for me because I've never really experienced being a normal person, because I did that in quotes because, well, let's face it here, there really is no such thing as normal. It can be a lot of different things. It's a spectrum. Not everyone has every single symptom.
You can tell from someone's, like, face if they have autism.
Autism is how someone's brain is wired.
Like, it's just part of your perception of the world.
When there's too much people standing around talking, too much noises, it just feels like uncomfortable.
It's lights and sounds that usually do it for me. Like, it's like the entire world is like pressuring you and like crunching on you, and there's not really much you can do about it except just to get out of there.
I don't go to movie theaters. I've never been to a concert. I feel like I'm missing out on a lot of stuff.
I remember very early on, like, watching someone scratching at the carpet. Like, the feeling sticks when it's really awful, and it's just like...
Some people with autism have a hard time on, like, knowing when someone's happy or sad or angry or frustrated.
I wish socializing were easier, definitely.
Because there are so many times when I'm with other people who seem to have a natural flow of conversation that they all get, and it almost seems like they have a psychic link with each other at some point that I am locked out of.
If someone with autism is like a quiet kid in a corner or something like that, it's usually because he's questioning himself. So if you see someone like sitting alone or something like that, feel free to go and talk to him. It can help them out a ton. Trust me, I know.
autistic people don't want to be talked down to, first of all.
Well, some people, like teachers and stuff, misunderstand because they don't know that people have autism.
I wish people would understand that autistic people have their own places.
I wish people wouldn't judge people with autism so harshly.
I want to know which person names where autism comes from.
I feel like a cure for autism is a complicated subject.
So in order to cure autism, you would have to go into DNA and genetics of someone and alter it. But that's your basic makeup, so that would probably impact your entire being.
I think if you're autistic, you're autistic, and really the only true cure, I think, is really what I have gotten over the years, which is support and love.
If I could cure autism, I would definitely not. Mainly because of the fact that I want people to be different.
I wouldn't want to cure autism now.
I'm really good at a lot of things.
I am good at thinking a lot.
Good at writing stories, like the beginning and endings. I'm just not very good at filling them in.
I'm good at,
I'm told I have a pretty good sense of humor. I'd like to think I have a good sense of humor. I went to music school for 6 years in vocal performance. I was a 3D animation major for 3 years.
I'm good at,
Creative writing, fiction, and medieval fantasy.
fishing, taking a walk, riding my bicycle, playing the piano, taking the train, reading, dancing, no, that's all I have.
A lot of people with autism are able to do something.
I would like to live independently.
I've always wanted to be a writer.
I also want to make the world a better place.
I don't just see one future, I see many possibilities for my future.
People with autism are people, too. That about sums it up.
Love that video. I've seen it probably a dozen times. I think it's every time. So, I think it's important to kind of recognize as we kind of go from here and take on a role of influencing cultures of classrooms, cultures of schools, students. Remembering that kids with autism are belong too. And there's a number of things. I'm going to throw out some stuff in the next couple of slides that maybe speak to this bigger idea, but are kind of tangible things. So what can we do? What can we do to help individuals affected by autism? So some tangible stuff. Know the behavior plan. So that sounds maybe, I think the reason I put this first and foremost is because kids with autism who are struggling with challenging behavior are in a great need to learn a lot of skills. But a good behavior plan is designed to teach skills in an individualized manner that ultimately results in this person accessing the community, accessing more environments, accessing more people, accessing long-term reinforcement. And a good behavior plan is only effective as it's implementation. So kids who are struggling with challenging behavior should have behavior plans, and all of the adults in this kid's universe should understand what that behavior plan is and should be on the same page and should have training and how to implement it with fidelity. Okay? So that is very important. It's not just for, you know, like, because we want to see less tantruming. There's a bigger picture here. All right, so general sort of broad strokes type stuff. Schedules can be very helpful for lots of reasons. If we go back to, I'm having trouble anticipating knowing what's coming next in my day. I'm having trouble anticipating. I don't know when I'm going to get to do the stuff that I want to do. I don't know how many assignments or whatever I got to do until I get to do the thing that I want to do, right? Because I don't have the sort of language chain, or I'm not putting that together in my head like the rest of us are, when we're constantly sort of talking ourselves down or talking ourselves through things. Visual schedules and checklists can be super duper helpful. Really low effort, good antecedent, get ahead of it type intervention. To the best of anybody's ability, and I know this can be a big ask sometimes, but having homework expectations clearly explained and available ahead of time for parents so that they kind of know, not only parents, but like home support teams, so we can kind of help support and expectations at school, knowing that that one-on-one attention and extra help is going to be important, and the more time we have ahead of time. A little thing, positively stating instructions, rules, and expectations. So one of the first things we do whenever we do parent training is try to shape, and it's hard, right? It's super hard. I've got two sons who are they're boys, man, and they're like all the time. And I really have to be mindful of like my instructions to them, right? Because I am frequently like, before I pause, you know, my inside voice is like, knock it off, stop doing that, don't do this. I'm not giving a whole lot of information in doing that, right? So we really work with people on giving positively stated instructions. We call them positive opposites. So when you want to say like, stop running in the hallway, the positive opposite of stop running in the hallway might be, please walk in the hallway, right? And it's stuff as simple as that, where we assume the expectation, we assume that they're going to know what to do, but you get a lot more bang for your buck when you positively state instructions. The other thing is, just in terms of like challenging behavior, there's a healthy amount of research too that says, if you say don't and label the behavior, you're very likely to see more of it. That just is what it is. So a challenge to yourself in that regard might be, try to get through a classroom or try to get through a class or a day without using the words no, stop, or don't. I know. I wish you the best of luck. I'm up against time, so I'm going to kind of zip through the rest of this. These are just a couple of examples of what you might need in terms of class schedules and rules. Not what you might need, just what you might be able to use. Notice the rules are all stated positively. It's there's no don't do this or don't do this. It's do this, do this, do this. Organizers, checklists, hourlies, things to help kids stay organized. Consider allowing breaks ahead of time in order to manage any stress proactively. You know, don't wait until it's a problem to allow breaks. Allow extra time for processing. Using confederates, so other students who might be supporters or help them with organizing, getting ready for class, that type of thing. Praise in public, critical feedback in private. I just think that's rules for everybody all the time. Critical focus should focus more on what to do than what not to do, and please emphasize practice over lecture. A lot of times we work with a lot of really frustrated teachers and parents who are like, I've told them 1,000 times. Well, yes, but the problem is verbal communication ain't a strong suit. So, practice, role play. with repetition. Consider strategic approaches to inclusion. I think this talk is with the spirit of inclusiveness. I don't want that to be confused with always inclusion all the time, because I think inclusion done haphazardly can be bad for both sides, and I think inclusion should be done, but it should be done strategically with training and support ahead of time, right? We want this to be as positive an experience being included for both sides, and if it's not done with good support and training ahead of time and where the kid's ready and there's been plenty of exposure, it could not be a positive experience, and we want the students who are typically developing students, we want them to come back and be supporters. Let's skip out some of this stuff. I hear people milling in the hallway. Consider certain accommodations, headphones, computers for handwriting, knowing that those things can be triggers and stressors regularly. Okay, so consider alternatives for lunch and recess, knowing that recess is highly unstructured, highly social. It is the social deep end. These are unsupported, unstructured, unsupervised times, and they are going to be very, very difficult for our kids on the spectrum if they're not supported. And these are oftentimes the vectors of bullying and victimization. So consider alternatives to that. All right, why? Here's the sort of motivational rounded out. Why? A lot of this stuff is a pain. It's inconvenient. It's counterintuitive. Why? Because we are servants of the community, because we chose to embark upon this career path to do something important. So, knowing that autism and other diversities are increasingly a part of all of our lives, what kind of environment do we hope to create for all students? What do you want your legacy to be? We want to create environments that are tolerant, adaptive, accommodating, pro-social, and nurturing. I do. I hope so. So, real quick, why nurturing environments? Well, for lots of reasons. Not only just because it makes people's lives a little bit easier and a little bit happier, but there's a lot of science out there about nurturing environments and creating nurturing environments that minimize coercive behavior, that are values directed, that respond flexibly. That is to say, groups that act towards long-term, culturally important outcomes, willing to accept and tolerate minor discomfort, like accommodating and adapting along the way. That these types of environments are associated with reduced crime, academic failure, addiction, high-risk behavior, and long-term physical illness over time. So there is really like a broader community health, global health initiative that is embedded in making some of these day-to-day accommodations. Some evidence-based packages that shape nurturing environments. Some of these are small scale, some of these are larger scale. Tootling, good behavior games. If anybody wants write-ups on these, I have them. They're really super duper easy to implement. PBIS tends to be a more school-wide initiative, but they're all based on the same thing, which is an emphasis on rewarding pro-social behavior, minimizing punishment, focused on observable, definable behavior, and recording behavior over time to ensure that its overall effectiveness. These are great programs, consistent with what we know in terms of building nurturing environments. So, we value healthy schools, healthy students. Maybe we leave here with a motivation to model support and reward tolerance, compassion, inclusiveness, and pro-sociality. Minimize opportunity for antisocial behavior. Be open to change in service of values. Work towards building nurturing environments for all students because it's important to you and what you want to have done with your time. I think the next one starts at 3. I have no idea what time it is. All right, so if there's questions, Amanda has my contact information. Yeah, thank you guys.
There's the camera.
Where are you going? You going over there?
Yeah. I think it's his office.
Thank you guys.
Where are you headed? I'm headed to Michelle's. Nice. I used to be a wedding planner. Oh, yeah. I used to be a wedding planner. Yeah. So that's what, before I had children, I was a wedding planner.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. That was
Yeah, Olivia was 3 weeks early, and so a week after she was born, I was home and stayed at a wedding with her.
I'm good. I've got a little water. So that, my previous coffee got from the system.
That table looks really dirty. How do I?
Oh,
You choose. Is it pause?
I'm gonna stop it right